This past weekend, we saw the Stage 3 Challengers 1 closed qualifier brackets, where the top 4 teams could make it to the NA playoffs for Masters 3. To no surprise, the top 4 teams were Sentinels, Exit, 100 Thieves, and Envy, taking the top 4 spots, with other notable upsets including KCP doing surprisingly well. I would love to talk about how Exit actually took a set off of the Sentinels, but unfortunately I don't have the game knowledge to really do it justice, and if I did, I'd be an actually good player. But today instead what I want to talk about is something else that came out this week. Since TSM, one of the most notorious Valorant teams in the world, did not make it to the closed qualifier brackets, they announced more roster changes. Now, there are a lot of teams that go through roster changes, but TSM has gone through some of the most notorious roster changes in the past year. At the beginning of Stage 2, they announced that they were picking up Brax, one of the prospects of early Valorant, and they played 4 matches with Brax, and then just stuck with their original roster, and then dropped Brax at the end of Stage 2, still not making it to Masters 2, or even the closed qualifier bracket. After their most recent loss in Stage 3, TSM dropped Drone, and is picking up a 5th, which we'll get to later. Drone is one of the best fraggers on their team, so it's shocking to a lot of people of why they would drop him. TSM is one of the most recognizable esports organizations in the world, so their Valorant team has probably the most eyes on it from both a fan perspective and a hater perspective. Whenever they make a decision, everyone's just saying, "Oh, this is such a terrible, we should have dropped this guy instead because this guy's way better." But what you have to understand is that TSM is the large esports organization. Every decision TSM makes isn't random. And when you say, "Oh, this is just a brain dead decision," you have to keep in mind that sure, in your eyes, TSM is washed. From TSM's perspective, they just signed a $220 million deal, and they're still washed. TSM was once the best team in the world. So what has happened since then in the Valorant scene that has dropped TSM to one of the tier 2 teams of the world? And what might they be able to do to improve themselves going forward? I'll just briefly go over this because I made a video already on the TSM Masters 1 situation. In early 2020, TSM was one of the best teams in the world, alongside 100 Thieves and Sentinels. TSM was winning a ton of tournaments and placed second at the First Strike tournament at the end of 2020. Going into 2021, TSM was a menace that no one wanted to approach in the bracket because they had such consistency. TSM's game plan at the time was very much CSGO with extra steps. They had 5 CSGO players, some older players in Cutler and Hazed, but also some newer players that were really good like Wardell. Wardell's still one of the best fraggers in the world, and this whole team has some of the greatest fraggers in the game. Unfortunately, what happened for TSM was that Valorant started to evolve. Valorant-specific agent selection, strats, movement, abilities all started to affect the game, and Valorant became more than just a CSGO type game. And at first, TSM was very good at brute forcing their way through, beating players because they were just better at video games. But at the end, TSM lost to Gen G, Exit, Luminosity, and 100 Thieves to miss out on going to Masters 1. Masters 1, it was the top 8 teams from North America going to one tournament, and TSM wasn't in the top 8. At this point, TSM had realized that something was going wrong, something was starting to sour on the team, so they decided to bring in Brax as a 6th man and to replace one of either Cutler or Hayes. So going into Stage 2, everyone was saying, alright, TSM, they're back. TSM's going to do a lot better this year. They have a new player, they have a young player as well. Let's see how they do. But when he joined TSM, they just couldn't get the same magic. They lost to Immortals at the beginning. After 4 games with Brax replacing Cutler, they just brought Cutler back. So it was the original 5-man squad, and they played again for the rest of Masters 2, and they lost to Ambox, missing out on the playoffs for Master 2. TSM, again, in a situation where they cannot progress to the top Valorant scene. They still might not be able to qualify for champions at the end of the year, one of the best esports team in the world. A team that was once TSM's rival, Sentinels, went on to Masters and crushed everyone. Meanwhile, TSM is still at home, not being able to beat their local bracket demon. So again, TSM announced another big roster change. This was just before the beginning of Season 3, so this is probably a couple months ago. They dropped Cutler and Brax, and they picked up Bang, a 17-year-old young player.
Yeah, so we had a little bit of a brief moment where Brax was brought in, and then, now today, I'm sure everyone knows we're here with Bang at the boot camp. Can you talk to me about that?
My decision was kind of like, I think we needed someone more aggressive and someone more, we just needed someone young, so it would help build motivation within the team. And I felt like Bang was the perfect piece because not only was he a free agent, which Valorant contracts right now are super tough to like get any player you want. It's just he brings so much more, like comms. He talks a lot. He entries hard. He has fresh ideas. So overall, it was like a better transition, at least from what I saw. Not to say Brax is a bad player. He was doing good work. It just didn't fit our roles.
With a team of Wardell, Sabrosa, Hayes, Drone, and Bang, they went on to play in their Stage 3 Challengers games. And they lost in the third match to Noble. Noble, a Tier 2 organization. TSM, once one of the best teams in the world, slowly dropping more and more down the rankings list. First losing to top tier teams, then losing to other Tier 1 orgs, and now just losing to Tier 2 teams. They still have one more chance to make it for the Stage 3 qualifiers for Masters 3. So they made one final change and they dropped Drone. Now this was a big deal in the Valorant scene because Drone is seen as one of the best players on TSM, often second fragging right behind Wardell. Everyone on forums and Reddit is just saying, man, what is TSM doing? But here's a clip from a big fan of the show, Nathan Stans, talking about benching players.
And let's talk about what we wanted to talk about last week, which is the benching of players that are good. Something that can be confusing to fans. And this is something that happens in traditional sports as well as esports. And in esports, the problem is Reddit and Twitter. Holy shit, people will not shut the fuck up. Sometimes different things are happening behind the scenes. And I think there is no better way to illustrate this than to talk about some things that are happening and then talk about some public things that have happened that might help you realize that esports is a tough industry and there are so many emotional and cultural issues that don't come up in the game. It's very easy to be like the kind of person who plays fantasy baseball. Well, their ERA and whip is this, and the value over replacement, the VORP times 2 square root of pi. This team is the best team in the world, but I'm sure there are underlying issues and things that happen on all of these teams.
Now, I don't claim to be the all-knowing authority on this. I don't claim to be the czar of video games. But oftentimes when organizations drop players, it's more than just what the fans can see. There could be something behind the scenes, conflicting personality-wise, conflicting gameplay-wise, that they have to drop Drone to really keep going further.
When we first made the team in Valorant, we were clicking really well, and we had a good mix of new talent and like experienced older talent, and you know, it was gonna work. We had the advantage early on because of that experience that we had, but the longer it went on, you know, there's just always going to be these, you know, 16-year-olds that just come out of the woodworks, and it's hard to keep up. It's just hard.
As Drone's replacement, they're looking towards Leviath from Noble. Funny enough, the team that beat them. Noble recently just disbanded, so Leviath will be primed for the picking. What TSM has to do moving forward is change their perspective on the game. They do have Wardell, one of the best operators in the world, who, when given the opportunity, will go absolutely crazy. For example, in the game against Gen G.
To see him on the scope weapon as soon as possible. We're going to see some aggression from Gen G at middle. They do try to smoke out Wardell, but he finds a sliver.
On the Marshall, now that regrowth going to be used atop. Wardell looking to have himself a game here on a set, has the blades available already, and it's looking to be, yes, another flawless.
But if TSM wants to become the new dynasty, they're going to have to start building from brick 1. No. If TSM wants to become the new dynasty of North America, which they very clearly can based off of their players, their resources they have to start building brick by brick. While I don't expect it to happen overnight, they have to prove to both the fans and themselves that they can be a winner. Starting the weekend of the 16th, Stage 3 Challengers 2 Open qualifiers start again, and this gives TSM one more opportunity to make it to Masters 3. There's only currently 4 spots available to make it into the closed qualifier bracket of this version, and there are a lot of teams that can still make it, including like T1, NRG, Luminosity, Complexity, Anbox, Cloud9. There's so many good teams that have still yet to make it, and if TSM wants to be one of those teams, they need to do something different. So in conclusion, what can TSM do to become one of the best teams in the world? I have no idea. I'm not an esports GM, I'm not an esports player, I'm just a dude who's sitting in his room right now with a $20 lav microphone that I purchased literally like 2 weeks ago. But I believe that TSM has all the building blocks that they need. They just need to figure out how to put it all together. And if they can do that, they can once again become one of the best teams in North America, and very likely one of the best teams in the world. And that's it for the video. If you're still watching at this point or not subscribed, hey, feel free to subscribe. It's free. You see a video every once in a while in your inbox. And it's going to be mostly about Valorant updates and other esports scene. If you want to hear more from me on Twitter, you can, as well as I have a Discord where we just talk about esports and play games. You can come join and be a fun time. I'm so glad that Weekly Valorant is back because I get to watch favorite teams and different matchups be played. I'm going to see that the Kansas City Pioneers go absolutely crazy, beating some very good teams, surprisingly. Gen G do pretty well as well, but I just want to see the best games be played, and that's what Valorant and video games are all about, I guess. This was a more discussion style video. I'm going to have more traditional scripted off the dome videos be released hopefully once a week as well. Thank you for watching. Have a good one. Peace.